Hey, fun fans! We're giving away a Devastator 3 keyboard and mouse combo courtesy of Cooler Master on YouTube for this month of June. All you have to do to enter is subscribe to Fun's YouTube channel and leave a comment on which state or region you think will be the next to go to districts. You can enter once per upload, and we'll pick a winner near the end of June.
Shut up and sit down.
But, another topic that we're going to talk about right now is there was an update that came out, and first Israel has announced that all the Israel district teams who are qualifying from that district will be attending the Detroit Championship in 2019 instead of their assigned Houston Championship due to the timing of Passover conflicting with the Houston event. Allegedly, what's been said is that Israel's going to lose a couple championship spots because of this move. Right now, the way it is because there's fewer teams who are assigned to Houston than Detroit. A district gets their proportions a little bit higher within Houston, so they will lose a couple spots. In theory, if they move to Detroit, this move does make a lot of sense because if you think about it, this is, again, it goes back to first in their flexibility and doing things on a case-by-case basis. Tyler's bringing up the district map right now. What this change will also do is that it's going to allow for a little bit more of an international flavor at the Detroit Championship, because as you can see by looking at the map, most international teams in the highly dense international areas are already going to the Houston Championship. So that'll bring a little bit more diversity there. So all that being said, Libby, a couple questions for you. Number one, since Israel's moving north, should a couple states from the Detroit Championship move south to kind of balance things out again? And also, should first consider rotating regions who have a little bit of flexibility in that they're not right by one of the championship locations to help diversify the championship experience?
Okay, so I guess my question is, and I truthfully, I don't know this, and I apologize for not knowing this off the top of my head, but I'm curious how many spots Israel is going to be losing, right? If it's one spot, that's kind of strange. If it's 10 spots, I don't even remember how many spots Israel gets, but if it's a lot, then that's a big problem, and that's an active issue with giving the championship experience to all teams.
Just to give you some numbers there, Libby. In theory, if you're going, it looks like they'll probably lose 2 spots. If things were the same as this year, they would drop from 15 to 13, but no one knows officially how this is going to be handled.
I like how this, candidly speaking, is like, let's discuss all of the things that are definitely not confirmed.
Correct. Just wait till we get to our next topic.
Oh boy, I'm so excited. But I think first should be prioritizing giving the region the spots that they are supposed to have. I would be interested to see how many teams went to Houston last year off of the wait list, and I don't see why Israel couldn't just have their spots and we could invite fewer waitlist teams. But I think we've beaten that horse to death several times on this show. But I like the idea of rotating non-US regions to the other championships because the other one, because the Detroit one. And to address some of the things in chat, I'm pretty sure Karthik and I know that Canada is international. But the point was that...
No, not familiar with that at all.
Karthik, did you know that Canada is not a part of the U.S.?
Shocking to me. Never...
Oh, boy. Gotta love Twitch chat. I think there's... I went to Houston and Detroit this year, and Louisville. I went to every championship you could possibly go to. But... I felt that Houston really felt more Olympics-like. I was aware of international teams, and Detroit felt kind of eh. I mean, I love my Canadian teams, so please don't blame me in chat, but it didn't feel like this big, crazy world championship that we're talking about. So that's one thing. I like the idea of rotating the non-US regions. Like maybe Israel goes to Detroit this year, and then the next year, Australia goes to, right? So mixing that around. But what I think the teams would appreciate is that that's a list that like marks out 3 or 4 years, right? If we know what the dates are going to be in various cities through the next 2 or 3 years, then those teams should also know, hey, in 2021, you are going to Detroit.
Yes.
Because otherwise that gets really, really logistically terrible for teams. And I don't think any team should not know what to expect year to year as far as where you're going. Like, we know we're going to go to Detroit forever until they announce a different championship because we're in New Jersey. But I think it would be nice to see more international teams in Detroit. I got the experience of going to both, and that was where I got to see my international world festival Olympics like feel was in Houston. But I think it would be cool to let all of the teams have that experience, because right now the 2 championship experiences are not consistent. And that's, I think, important.
Yeah. So interesting. Looking at the Chief thread, I thought the most interesting comment in all of that was that apparently one Israeli team had already booked their tickets to Houston champs. I'm like, well, that's effing bold. Like,
to be fair, that's got to be super expensive. I mean, I can see it being like maybe they bought the tickets, but then if they don't qualify, they're going to offer that block to another team. Actually, a lot of teams in our region do that with buses, to say like, hey, we have a bus, but we're not going. Do you want it?
It's harder to transfer airline ticket. I don't know. I thought that
True.
was fun. It seems, very bold, but it's not like hotel rooms, which are easy to cancel. As Libby said, it'd be great I would love to cut down on the amount of waitlist teams, but First does seem pretty committed to giving about 10% of each championship to the waitlists. It was about 40 teams at both that were waitlist spots this year. So
that's where the losing 2 spots baffles me. Really? You can't do 38 teams off the waitlist instead of 40? Like,
yeah. But like the losing 2 spots thing, it's not just about that. It's about if Israel was given the same amount of spots in Houston as they were in Detroit, that means Israel would proportionally be getting more spots than Ontario or Mar or Michigan. And we know how well that will go over with those groups, like.
Listen, the Mar teams are all pretty ready to riot as is, so maybe you don't want to mess with us.
Yeah, apparently. So, it is going to be what it is going to be in terms of that. In terms of having regions swap periodically, I don't know, it just seems a little weird to me. Like, I get it. Like, I wasn't at Detroit Champs this year, but I do love an internationally flavored event, and it would be kind of lame if you didn't have that. But at the same time, I don't know, there's also something to be said about just like, this is the way the map is drawn and this is the way it's going to be. But I do want to give First a lot of credit for having the flexibility, and we've talked about this again, and I know we saw a lack of flexibility in what Libby reported from the Western Pennsylvania situation, but a lot of flexibility here by allowing Israel to switch championships, because it would have been heartbreaking if there was large numbers, or it wouldn't have mattered if it was a large number, if it was just a couple of teams who had to miss championship because of the holiday. So I'm really glad that First allowed for that. I think that's a big deal. So we have a question here from Alt Sutto. How does VEX work with only one Worlds, as they have a lot more teams? I guess I'm qualified to answer this. So VEX, it's really, really hard to qualify for VEX Worlds. Each state has a certain number. Each state or each country has a certain number of spots, and it becomes a very contentious issue in the VEX community. If you go on VEX forum and look at the recent threads about championship spots, it's it's like Chief Delphi 2.0, how hot the discussions get. But it's basically proportionally done. Each state gets a proportion of spots at championship based on the proportion of the VRC or VEX IQ community. Small regions who are just getting started, or just small regions, every state is guaranteed at least one spot, and every country is guaranteed at least one spot. There's some countries with only one team, but that country will definitely get one spot. And so it's a little bit of heartburn on that. In the past, there's been an allowance for teams in the VEX runs a skills challenge where teams compete on the field for 1 minute by themselves. The top 50 teams in the skills challenges were also guaranteed a spot, and that was a way for regions to punch above their weight. They removed that for this upcoming season. So that's basically how it works. There's a lot of, it's proportionally done, but within the VEX community, most people are happy with that, but a small group of the community, which is an important group because they're like the top end teams, really think that it should be switched to should be based on the strength of the regions, like how many top teams there are in a region should define the amount of spots as opposed to just how many teams they have. But that's basically the rundown on how Vex does it.
Also, the other thing I want to point out, that if you're not familiar with this, the way that Vex Worlds works is that it is a longer overall chunk of time, and VRC happens for a few days, and then there's kind of a breakdown, and then Vex IQ happens on different days. So rather than all of the programs under one roof, you have essentially two separate events for the different kind of leagues. And so that's, I wanted to point that out just in case folks in chat are not aware of that. If you are familiar with both communities or you volunteered with that, then you would have seen it. But that is the solution. It is one venue for a longer period of time rather than two venues and everybody split in half.
Right. And so that allowed,
I think it's fun.
And what was cool about that was if Vex tried to keep doing it with IQ and VRC at the same time, they would have had to shrink both events. But since they are done separately, they were able to expand both, and that really helped with the growth and the massive growth of teams in there. But Vex Worlds is really, really hard to qualify for. I believe it's 7% of teams make it to Vex Worlds or something as low as that. So, and it's crazy that it's so hard to qualify for, but teams still think that it needs to be more of an elite event. But that's just stuff within the Vex community.
Yeah. So I think that covers it. If you have further questions on that, you can always tag at First Updates Now in the chat, and we can address it at the not post show, but at the end of our discussed topics. So